Farrar saw the bruise on my arm. She pulled the pistol off her hip pocket and ran off to talk to the landlord. She waved her pistol about and invoked the good name of her dead father, the late Colonel Farrar, who served in the Crimea. Despite her small size, Val was fearsome, with her mother's fiery red hair and her father's sharp black eyes. I had always admired her because she was nicer to Mama than any of the men who tried to pick her up when they saw her walking about in town. My Mama, Betsy LaBelle, was a fine-looking woman, and all the men in town knew it too. Heck, so did some of the women. Val was one of those women, and Mama actually liked her too. The differences in their life circumstances, there was real feeling that they shared for one another. Mama said she wished it wasn't like this. She didn't like to be anyone else's burden, but Val didn't see her as such. The way Val looked at Mama with those black eyes of hers told me she'd do anything for Mama. Everything I have could be yours. Betsy, you deserve way better than this life here. Come on, we can take Reese and get you both the hell away from this wretched place. Val said softly, then planted a soft kiss on Mama's cheek. Val's rage at seeing my bruised arm, yes, a drunk man had grabbed at me as I had been going back to our small house the night before. I tore back into our little house and hid in the back room after locking the door. Mama told me to stay inside after dark. I'd go outside if I absolutely had to. Val had always looked out for me too, just to make sure I was okay. You're a big part of your Mama's heart, Reese. I need to make sure you're both okay. I don't see how you could be in a place like this. I wish your Mama would let me take you both away from here. I promise you it would be different, Val said to me that morning, and that's when her eyes fell on the bruise. I knew Val would be with us that morning, so I made her some eggs, beans, and toast. Val put her father's service pistol back in its holder and went to my side. I resolved everything. You and your Mama are coming back home with me, Reese. I paid off your Mama's debts. Leave as soon as she's able to. She raked a hand through her short-cropped red hair, nervous, for she didn't know how Mama would take the news. Mama had been determined to work off her own debt, but Val had gone and paid it off. I think the bruise on my arm inspired her to act quickly that morning. Do you need help with the packing? We haven't got much. I just need to wake Mama. She worked late last night, trying to sew all these garments by candlelight. We can eat before we leave. It'll be the last night she ever works again. You hear me, Reese? I won't let your Mama ever have to worry again. I intend to do right by both of you, Val said before going to retrieve her car. We ate breakfast in our old home together. Mama was still half asleep but overcome with emotion when Val said she'd come to take us both back to her home for good. Mama's debt was now obliterated. She was free to do whatever she pleased. She cried for joy over her beans and toast. Val kissed her cheek and took her hand in reassurance. Thank you for the breakfast, Reese. She smiled with a dimple in her cheek. After doing the washing up, she helped us load our belongings into the back seat of her car. She was one of the only people in town who had one, a new machine for this new era. Mama and I marveled at it. We felt like royalty to be driven off by Val in her car. I looked at the small houses and the rundown area where I had spent the first 13 years of my life. Never again would Mama and I dwell in such a sad, forlorn place. Val was taking us to go live with her on the Farrars' estate in the country. It belonged to her now, since her father had died a few years prior. He left everything to her, as she was his only daughter. No longer would Mama fear for me. No longer would Mama have to wait for one of Val's nights in anticipation to feel safe from uncertainty, because she was now with Val every night. And not only was she flooded with relief for both of us, she finally looked happy. Soon after Mama and I moved in with Val, I was sent off to finishing school on the recommendation of a man who claimed to be my paternal uncle. He arrived on Valerie's doorstep one day to meet me. He first contacted her via letter to see if his suspicions about my paternity were true. Mama confirmed that the gentleman before me was indeed my uncle. Eager he was to help me, for he believed to his core that it was his duty to do so. Uncle Stephen somehow found us after going through Papa's papers. He was an odd man, highly bird-like in his motions and carriage. He looked at me through spectacles as if trying to find a trace of his brother in my face. My name is Stephen St. John. You are my niece. I am your father's older brother. I learned that my full name is Therese Marguerite LaBelle St. John, and that I'm one of Cedric St. John's 8 living bastard children. A rascal through and through, my father never married. He did, however, womanize, while most other men had more wholesome hobbies. My poor dear Uncle Stephen had a crisis to realize this, and out of his Christian guilt, made it his life's work to try and find all of the children fathered by his philandering brother. As I have made clear, I did not have a real relationship with my father. This did not hurt me as much as one might expect. Between Mama, Val, and now Uncle Stephen, I felt loved and provided for well enough. I looked from Uncle Stephen's tailored suit to the hat in his hands. He had taken it off out of respect. I had heard of the St. Johns, for they were a powerful family. Stephen St. John was a lawyer and the elder of 2 brothers. My father, Cedric, was the second son, who knew no limitations. He didn't do the decent thing and marry a lady of his class. Oh, no. Father shamed his older brother with his debauched behavior. Cedric St. John was the prodigal son. Stephen was every parent's dream child. He never questioned my late grandfather and obeyed him to an almost unbelievable degree. He had his father's sense of tradition and his mother's sense of devotion, 2 things that my father flagrantly ignored. Lydia was Uncle Stephen's wife. They tried to have children, but nothing came of it. This might have been why Cedric's careless conduct towards us offended Uncle Stephen so deeply. Cedric has done a great injustice to you and your mother, Reese. I'll do my best to assure that your future is safe and bright. You are, as of right now, my sole heir, meaning you will inherit the entire St. John fortune upon my death. Your father had several children whom I am searching for, intend to provide for, if necessary. The odd man announced in Val Farrar's dining room over afternoon tea. Mama confirmed that Cedric St. John was my father. She carried on a long affair with him for over a year, 1896, the year before I was born. He promised her everything before dropping her to go after another woman who caught his eye. Mama recalled the betrayal with a dizzy misery. Uncle Stephen, who looked almost nothing like his younger brother, produced a photograph that stirred her memory. She recognized the man's smug twist of a mouth under a blonde mustache. That was her Cedric, all right. He looks like a complete and utter cad. Val pulled a disgusted face to look upon my father. She had no interest in the man who had abandoned his woman and child to live in such miserable poverty. "Oh, you are correct, Miss Farrar. He certainly is," Uncle Stephen replied, also grimacing, ashamed of his brother's dishonorable conduct, regard for the women he cavorted with, and never gave a thought to any children he had fathered. "Ungrateful beast!" My Uncle Stephen couldn't help but feel outraged. He himself had been denied fatherhood, though he and his wife Lydia were entirely pious and followed all of the day's social rules with the utmost strictness. "I could provide for Reese just as well, Mr. St. John. I have all my father's money now. He passed a few years back, and I'm his only living child," Val pointed out, not sure what to make of this man suddenly trying to claim me as his relation. "You should save it for your cousins. Keep the money in your family, Miss Farrar. Reese is a St. John, not a Farrar. Miss LaBelle just confirmed it." Valerie and Mama looked uncertainly between each other. "Living with her Mama and me for the last year. I got them out of a wretched place, Mr. St. John. Reese should stay with us. I promised them both I'd do right by them. You have my word they're safe here with me. All the same, I do think that Reese should be educated and brought up to be a lady. Our family is a prominent one. I could fund her placement and time at a proper ladies' academy. It's the least I could do for the girl," my Uncle Stephen offered. Val had been to a ladies' academy herself when she was a young girl. She raised some real hell back then. She remembered her wild youth rather fondly. She turned to me as I was still a shy, quiet girl at 15. Perhaps out of fear or obligation, I stayed close to Mama for all this time. Val let me do as I pleased since she thought my life had been so difficult up to that point. Didn't want to separate us, Mama and I, thinking it wouldn't be good for us. Though her actions had been out of love, the practical nature of Stephen St. John stirred something in her. "Reese, honey, do you want to go to school? You'd be with girls your own age and be able to make some friends. You'd learn many helpful skills. Perhaps your uncle is right," Val admitted. She felt some regret for not sending me earlier, but I know she was worried that sending me off to school would give Mama extreme anxiety. Val knew I was all Mama had left in the world. Before this meeting, she wouldn't see us parted for anything. Mama, I'd like to go, but only if it doesn't trouble you. I'll take her to and from school myself. Or better yet, we can take Reese together, Betsy. We can always see her off, Val said, trying to ease Mama's anxiety. My Uncle Stephen took this in quietly over his cup of Earl Grey tea. I could feel him making mental notes on all of us. He said nothing against Mama and Val being together, but he was the kind to wisely hold his tongue, I could tell. Some people had been rude to them before. Nasty men tried to spit on us sometimes when we all walked in the street together. They seemed aware of Val's reputation, too. Val covered Mama with her cape to shield her. Sometimes she yelled back and engaged with the men if she was riled enough. "You stay with your Mama, Reese. I'm going to teach that cad some damn manners," Val said to me as she ran back over to the man who spit at us. Val went pink with rage and cursed him out in the street for all to hear. She challenged the man to a duel, waving her father's service pistol in the air. The man backed off when he saw the colonel's old gun. He was not about to let this angry little spitfire of a woman emasculate him in the public square. He ran off, leaving her challenge unanswered. Coward that he was. There was no way Uncle Stephen wasn't aware of who Valerie Farrar was. She got into fights with men often enough. It was some of the most known talk in the town. She shot a man in the foot when he wouldn't stop harassing these two girls walking home from their work at dusk. "Next time I'll aim a little higher, and it will cost you much more, sir. I promise you that." Uncle Stephen wasn't afraid of Val, though. I could tell by his poise. Tactful through and through, my uncle would only reveal whatever he found absolutely necessary. It did not surprise me that he would later be elected to Parliament in the chaotic year of 1914. "I will pay for Reese's schooling in full, and you can transport her, since it appears that it will put you all at ease. Miss LaBelle, Miss Farrar, are those terms agreeable to you both?" Uncle Stephen asked, calmly and smoothly. He had negotiated terms before. His trade was interpreting the law. He knew how to deal with characters of all kinds. Val's protective nature didn't trouble him once he realized where her surliness came from. He understood that she had come to expect outright hostility from men she didn't know. He had no reason to rile or injure her further. My future was in his personal interest. He intended to offer his home as another place for me to live, should I want to go live there instead. "Yes, your terms are agreeable, Mr. St. John," Val answered. Mama nodded along with her. They were holding hands under the table, though I'm sure my uncle saw as I did. He didn't even blink. He made his opinions impossible to divine. "Reese, I have also consulted with your Aunt Lydia. You heard your mother and Miss Farrar. We all agree that you need to go to finishing school. Your education is lacking. You've recently turned 15 years old. Most young ladies your age are highly accomplished. You have much catching up to do, but I'm confident that you will rise to the challenge." Uncle Stephen decided then to tell his plan for me. I was to visit the family manor before I was sent off to school in a few weeks. Val and Mama took me to meet Uncle Stephen and Aunt Lydia at the St. John family home, the one that would be mine in some distant time. Aunt Lydia did not like me. I could tell by the look she gave me, but for her husband's sake she knew she had to be civil. "Going to finishing school will do you well, Therese Marguerite." Aunt Lydia liked to use my full name, claiming Reese was an awful unfeminine name for a girl. She and Val had this awkward staring contest, which even managed to ruffle Uncle Stephen's calm. Come to learn that only Aunt Lydia seemed to have the power to break Uncle Stephen's collected, cool nature. She was the stronger-willed of the two of them, but the one thing she couldn't stop him in was his quest to find all of Cedric's children. She thought it a terrible mistake for him to invest in. "We must wait for Cedric to settle down and marry, so that he can have some of his own children. His children shall be our heirs, Lydia. It is what has been decreed from on high," Uncle Stephen had said. It hurt him when he realized that his brother, who had no regard for family ties, ended up being the one to father nearly a dozen children. Imagine where Cedric's children could be. What kind of women birthed them? No female with any sense would let a scoundrel like your brother near them. Aunt Lydia was outraged when the existence of my siblings and I came to light. She especially hated how it shook up my uncle and inspired him to look for us. I don't care if all their mothers are women from the street. Lydia, don't you see? They're all Cedric's children, our nephews and nieces. We have to find them. No, you don't, Stephen. Think of the scandal, Aunt Lydia cried. It's too late. Those children deserve to know the truth. This is my purpose now. He shrugged, turning away from her to stare out the window, envisioning reuniting with all of us. Val and Aunt Lydia, as it turned out, had gone to the same ladies' finishing school that I'd attend. They were classmates, though Aunt Lydia was a few years ahead of Val. That's why they glared at each other with such hatred. They used to be rivals of sorts. That didn't surprise me at all. Their personalities clashed only in the way that two strong-willed women's did. Aunt Lydia, for all her ire, though, seemed to hold back for my Uncle Stephen's sake. While she didn't agree with his newfound project of finding all of Cedric's children, she knew she'd stand by him in his decision to find us. She didn't have to be happy about it, though. She couldn't tolerate Cedric. By default, she'd also dislike any of his children, even if we never met the man. Val kissed Mama's cheek and walked out into the hall. She said she didn't want to stand between the St. Johns and me. I was their niece, after all. Aunt Lydia's will seemed to have won this battle, unless it was something else. Well, Stephen looked as if he were about to insist that she stay, but Aunt Lydia gave him a cutting glance, so he looked down into his teacup instead. Mama seemed torn. She didn't know if she should stay with me or follow after Val. It's okay, Mama, you can go after Val. I'll be fine with Uncle Stephen and Aunt Lydia here. All right, honey, I don't know what's gotten into Val, but I can tell something's off, Mama said. Mr. St. John, Mrs. St. John, for hosting us. See if I can get Valerie to come back. Once she was sure Mama was out of her hearing range, Aunt Lydia turned to me. You know if Stephen fails to find any of the others, you will be his sole heir. Do you understand the significance of that, Therese Marguerite? Uncle Stephen now looked at me, watching for my reaction. He could be intimidating, his set frown hiding any judgment that he was making inside himself. The portrait of a handsome young couple and their firstborn baby boy in the dining room. It was a relic from the 1860s, first generation of people who could be photographed. They were my grandparents, with the baby that would grow up to be my Uncle Stephen. Notably, the portrait was taken before my father was born. Was this the last time the St. John family knew peace? That must have been almost 40 years ago. He had been looking at me, not unkindly, I now realize. He was just a very particular man in that he tended to stare at people, as if analyzing them for personal data collection. This odd habit of his, paired with his profession of a solicitor, made him seem more intimidating than he actually was. The person to fear in the wife, Lydia. She too stared at me, but hers was a much colder stare than his. He was trying to figure out what to do with me, as he felt a responsibility towards me. She, on the other hand, wanted me gone. She wanted to toss Mama, Val, and I out the door and into the street. I had the distinct feeling she'd enjoy doing it, too. Uncle Stephen wouldn't allow that. I'm not sure if he was even aware of his wife's inner cruelty. He seemed like a very aloof, odd man. Reese, I ought to tell you, you aren't the only child that my brother had. I believe that you have many siblings. My best guess is that there are between 6 and 12 of you. I've been digging through Cedric's papers because I had a feeling that he was hiding something from our father and me. I happened to be right, though I didn't want to be under these circumstances, Uncle finally said, with a sadness in his brown eyes. He felt bad for me and for all my missing brothers and sisters. While I went on to finishing school, Uncle Stephen meticulously combed through Cedric's papers. 8 was the number of heirs he settled on, 7 perfect strangers, and me. I agreed to help Uncle Stephen in this difficult search. Perhaps all could be made right if we could find all of the missing St. Johns and bring them together. I wondered what kind of lives they all lived, and would live, as we remained separate. Even up to the war, I remained hopeful that one day I'd bring all of my brothers and sisters back home.